podcast and former ESPN contributor Pablo Torre is reporting that the Clippers circumvented the NBA salary cap by arranging a no-show job for Kawhi Leonard back in 2022.
When Steve Ballmer came and had that interview with Ramona Shelburne, he had plausible deniability.
Was there an exception made in terms of our relationship with aspiration? Absolutely not.
These revelations that came out today had substantially less plausible deniability.
The vice chairman of the Clippers made an independent decision to invest in aspiration 9 days before Kawhi Leonard got paid when no one else was getting paid.
How broad do your powers extend as far as penalties you can assess to the Clippers, to Kawhi Leonard?
I have very broad powers in these situations.
So right now on ESPN.com, senior writer Baxter Holmes, he peels back the layers of the dealings between Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers, and aspiration. He also takes an in-depth look at Kawhi's Clippers tenure, and he joins us right here on NBA Today. Baxter, really, you detail in your story that this isn't the first time that the league has had questions about Kawhi Leonard, about his health, about his business dealings. But this one with aspiration, it is a little bit different. Why?
Yeah, certainly. A former Clippers staffer pointed out to me quite clearly that this is the first thing that they've dealt with that calls into the character of the owner, Steve Ballmer. Now, they've dealt with lawsuits, they've dealt with fines, they've dealt with other NBA investigations, but this is different because it goes all the way to the top of the organization. And then also, if you consider that the allegation of circumventing the cap, that's considered like, a cardinal sin of the NBA. It's different than not being maybe transparent on injury reports or things like that. So that's how it's different.
So there's a lot in your story, but I think the crux maybe that viewers need to know is there are several sources, and you interview more than 24, who point to the fact that it may be time for, as they say, the Clippers to get out of the Kawhi business. That's what they said to you. Why? Where do things stand now?
Well, look, the Clippers are optimistic that if he can stay healthy, they're excited about the coming season. But taking a step back, if you consider the huge investment that they made in him in the beginning, which has helped Oklahoma City build the dynasty in many ways, if you consider how many games that he's missed, if you consider all of the off-court issues and drama, the current ongoing investigation that's playing out right now, a former staffer said to me, it's at some point Steve has to get out of the Kawhi Leonard business. Now, he's under contract for 2 more seasons, at the end of which he'd be 36. Obviously, he has extensive mileage and injury history. I don't know what happens to him after that point. People I talked to do said they expect him to play through this current contract. Beyond that, no one's quite sure.
Well, and when you think about the last time we saw Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers on the court, it was really exciting, I think, to see for a lot of Clippers fans, which makes this all the more complicated as the organization takes a look at how it's going to move forward here. I want to bring Brian Windhorst back into the conversation. Wendy, what does this actually look like, do you think, this season for Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers?
I don't think it's going to affect this season at all, other than being a distraction. I think if you're a Clipper fan, the one thing that you can take solace in is that the team looked very good at the end of last season. They finished the regular season 17-4. Everybody remembers that they were ahead in the series against the Nuggets 2-1 and were ahead in the final minute of Game 4 before the Aaron Gordon tip dunk at the very end of the game, which was one of the most remarkable plays in the playoffs that turned that entire series. And then in the second half of last season, after the All-Star break, Kawhi averaged almost 26.7 rebounds and shot 52%. And even continued to work out through mid-June because he felt so good and wanted to have his body take over. And as Baxter said, he is under contract for the next 2 seasons for $100 million. The Clippers may have made some mistakes in the past with the Kawhi Leonard situation, but they are stuck into it right now and actually feel like they're in a good place with the team and this roster changes that they've made. And that's what I think the message that you'll hear when they meet for training camp in 2 weeks.
Wendy, thank you. I want to bring Pau Gasol and our reporter Tim McMahon into this conversation as well. Pau, I'm going to start with you because you played with Kawhi for 2 seasons, right, in San Antonio with the Spurs. What insights did maybe you glean then that could have, foreshadowed what we're seeing now?
Yeah, I mean, Kawhi, when I played with him in San Antonio, obviously he was one of the greatest players in the league. He could make stuff happen in either end of the floor in an elite way. And that's, then the way he exited San Antonio was quite not ideal, and he was it created some issues, also around our season at the time. But apparently there were some differences that couldn't be solved, and he kind of, got his way out. Luckily for my brother and the Raptors, they benefited from that, you know, and they won a championship, and they were very happy about that. And I'm always obviously happy and I'm rooting for success. Here, the Clippers took a big gamble. It didn't quite pan out as they planned. I think when you look back, and I think you mentioned it on the article, a lot of GMs at the time, when he was a free agent, they would have gone all in also for Kawhi. And bringing Paul George at the time was also one of the top players in the league. So, it just didn't work out. Now they have to deal with reality and what's here, what's in front of them, and looking at what's best for the franchise going forward, whether it's, and at some point relationships end, in terms end. So Kawhi will be, just like any other player, will be moving on, and the Clippers have to deal with what's best for them, and they should be optimistic and positive going into a season. If you're not, you're already kind of fish dead in the water, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's it.
I think it's an important point that you made, though, that the Baxter outlined when you said that general managers around the league sort of note that at the time, particularly in the situation that the Clippers were in, where they were sort of trying to come out of this Donald Sterling era, it's a move that most teams would have made to get a player like Kawhi Leonard. All of this kind of brings the question, Tim, of, okay, what happens next? What challenges will the Clippers face as they try to settle all of this and perhaps even move on, if that is what comes to fruition?
Oh, yeah, and look, the Clippers sold their soul to open up a championship window, right? And hey, don't blame them at all for doing that, for bringing in the reigning Finals MVP and a guy in Paul George who was a first-team All-NBA player at the time. Obviously, the price was steep. It ended up being steeper than anybody could imagine, but they still haven't paid off that credit card bill. You're talking about pivoting from Kawhi Leonard. You're not done paying, right? And you're not done paying for the James Harden trade either, which is, again, trying to capitalize on having Kawhi as a part-time superstar. It's a guy who plays 42% of the games. It's a guy who's finished only 2 of 6 postseasons since he's been in a Clippers uniform. They are out their draft capital in the first round, either outright or via swaps in 26, 27, 28, 29. We'll see what happens at the conclusion of this NBA investigation. But you're talking about pivoting when you're still digging out of pain.
Yeah. I think the legacy of Kawhi in many ways, look, it was a huge gamble, obviously. And initially, after the elation of landing him and thinking about championship aspirations, there was also the fear of losing him because they knew what happened in San Antonio. NBA teams can be afraid of their superstars, and they knew how much of an investment it was. And I think the elements of fear and secrecy, giving way to heartbreak about his injuries, and then looking at Oklahoma City and knowing what they have there, it's a combination of a lot of emotions and what has been so far a failure.
Right. Well, because when you connect the dots, there are some ways in which you can say that these moves have directly led to a championship for Oklahoma City and perhaps one of the best chances we've seen at a dynasty since the Golden State Warriors. Again, this is complicated. There's a lot there. I encourage you all after the show to go check out Baxter's article. It's up right now on ESPN.com and get the full context here that we're talking about. Of course, we will continue. No repeat champions in over 7 seasons, but that didn't stop our experts here. They have the reigning champs coming in at number 1 because this summer, the Thunder, remember, they locked in their core, SGA, J-Dub, and Chet, until the 2030-31 season. They also have up to 8 first-round picks in the next 3 drafts. So, Brian, the question is, how many championships is this team going to win in the next 3 years?
Yeah, so obviously this is an easy pick at number 1. The real question is, after this upcoming season, Malika, when Lou Dort and Isaiah Hartenstein both can be free agents, and the question is, can the team afford to keep this core together? But they're going to keep their stars together.
See how he just Euro sidestepped me on that question,
Hey,
Tim?
Wendy doesn't do predictions because he is
well, coming
scared.
in at number 2. Did you just call him scared?
Scared.
Let's talk about the Rockets. Just acquired Kevin Durant this summer. He joins a core of Alperen Sengun, rising star Ben Thompson. I'm actually going to go to you, Tim, on this one, not Shanae. Is there a chance we could see the Rockets leapfrog OKC in that number 1 spot in the next 3 years?
OKC is leaps and bounds over anybody else, but the Rockets have positioned themselves as the primary challenger. Here's the question, though. Will Kevin Durant be in Houston for all those 3 years?
Yes.
That extension ain't done yet.
Coming in at number 3 for the future power rankings, the New York Knicks. Their core of Brunson, Cat, OG, Bridges, remember, all under contract at least the next 3 seasons. So, Shanae, are they best set up in the East during these 3 years?
One thing I do know is it should not be new coach, same results. There's a lot of pressure in New York, but they're not new to that as well. I mean, look, if you look at the East, it's decimated by injuries. This is an opportunity for them to get back to where they just were, Eastern Conference Finals. But I do believe if they stay together and they address their depth, they will have a shot for the years to come.
I feel like I asked everyone a question. I don't know if anyone answered what I asked, but you know what? It's fine. Pau can host the next segment. All right, that's the top 3. The next 12.
This is where it gets interesting. Did you see this, Shanae? The Cavs, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Magic, the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Spurs.
Oh, wow.
Clippers.
They round out the top 10. This is the next 3 years, remember. One outlier, the Timberwolves. They've gone to 2 straight Western Conference Finals, and Rudy Gobert, he was on the Young Man in the 3 podcast, and he talked about being so close to reaching the finals. Take a listen.
I mean, biggest perspective is that we were right there.
Yeah.
You know, so obviously we were right a step below the NBA Finals for 2 years in a row. So it's frustrating because that doesn't happen, you know, in a career. It's not something that happens all the time, but at the same time, it shows that we've been able to do it over and over, and that we're creating something